There's something we need to nip in the bud right now before it continues to fester. I don't want to hear any more of this higher Jerry Stackhouse noise.
You are Locked On Tar Heels, your daily podcast on the UNC Tar Heels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, it's Thursday, March 16th, 2023. Welcome into the Locked On Tar Heels podcast, the only daily North Carolina show out there. I'm your host, Isaac Shade, and I want to thank you for joining us for today's show. Coming up, we're going to talk some Jerry Stackhouse business. We're going to talk why I'm tired of hearing that it's already people are trying to talk about firing Hubert Davis. Come on. And then third, we're finally starting to get some actual names that Carolina is pursuing in the transfer portal. But very first, to those of you watching, you've already seen this. I am in all black for those of you listening that can't see it. And you might be wondering why that's going on. Some of you might guess it. Today is the first day of the NCAA tournament. And while it's usually Christmas morning, last year on the show on this day, I literally wore a Santa hat and Christmas jammies. Today I'm mourning because it is what is supposed to be my favorite day of the year, every year. But here we are not getting to watch the Tar Heels today or tomorrow. They're not playing a first round game, and it's a bummer. So thusly, I'm in mourning. I would imagine you are too. Maybe join me in solidarity and just wear all black and be mourning all day long. Hey, want to give you a quick reminder on tomorrow's show. I'm going to be kind of saluting Leaky and Pete a little bit as they are on their way out. We don't know about Armando yet, so don't want to do anything with that, but would love it if you would send in a quick video, maybe some words to them, and I'll pick some of those and put them on Friday's show. I already got several coming in. Thank you to those of you who have already done that. Would love to get more. You can send them to the show, lockedontarheels@gmail.com. You can DM them to me on Twitter. You can DM them to the show, or just find me anywhere else. Love it. Okay, let's get into the meat and potatoes here. You ready? Listen, Jerry Stackhouse and Vanderbilt had a very nice closing run to the 22-23 season. In fact, it's probably the best stretch he's had as the head coach of the Commodores in his 4 years there. And what did it earn him? A trip to the NIT. So why on earth, friends, am I hearing calls for Hubert Davis's head on a platter and instead hiring Jerry Stackhouse as the coach of the Tar Heels? To me, this is recency bias at its very worst. In no world should we be talking about Hubert Davis's job security right now. More on that soon, though. We're going to get to that in the second part of the show. With all due respect to Stack, who is one of the single greatest players in the entire history of North Carolina basketball. But at this point in time, he is simply not that guy to be the head coach of the Tar Heels. Could be, might be, one day, who knows? But that is not this day. It is not right now. Please stop it with the Jerry Stackhouse nonsense. As Vandy was making this end of season run and as Carolina was stumbling, I saw this all over the place. Maybe you did too. Let me know in the comments if you were seeing this. But let me just lay out some numbers for you, shall I? In his 4 years at Vanderbilt, here's what Coach Stackhouse has done. 11-21 overall, 3-15 in the SEC, finished 14th. By the way, there are 14 teams in the SEC, so that equates to dead last. Oh boy, 9-16 overall, 3-13, 13th in the SEC. That ain't the seller. And then last year, the 21-22 season, 9-17 overall, 7-11 in the SEC, 11th overall in the conference standings. And then this year, a very respectable 21-14, 11-7 overall, tied for fourth in the SEC. However, before that late season run, the Commodores were 10-12 at one point and 3-6 in SEC play. They did. They won 9 out of 10 games down the stretch of the regular season, including knocking off Kentucky once, Tennessee once, and then beating Kentucky again in the SEC tournament. So that's great. And then they ultimately lost to A&M in the semifinals of the SEC. And then they've won another game. That's their 21st. They beat Yale in their first NIT game. That's great. But I know it's Vanderbilt, and I know it's not the same level as North Carolina. But even at Vanderbilt, the very best coaches would find a way to win. That's just what it is. Jerry Stackhouse has not done that. And what about his temperament? Like, he'll light a fire under you. I love that. But is the fire he's lighting the kind of fire you want? Jerry has made some moves. It's bold, not my kind of move. And I don't think the guy that the Carolina community would want leading its team right now. I'm not saying never. I'm just saying stop with this noise. It's ludicrous. And some of the Wes Miller noise has cropped up again as well. He had a strong run at UNC Greensboro, 185 wins and 135 losses in his time there, made 2 NCAA tournaments. That's great at UNCG. And he's been all right in the first 2 years at Cincinnati, 8-15 last year, 7-11 in conference play, 8th in the AAC standings this year. Very similar to where Vandy's at right now, 22-12 because they just won right before I'm recording this, and 11-7 in AAC play, which was good for 4th. Also in the NIT. And in fact, they just won an NIT game over Virginia Tech, 81-72. So that's great. Like I get it. But still, it's not what Mick Cronin was doing at Cincinnati before he left for UCLA. It just is what it is. Maybe one day. Well, I mean, Wes Miller is a phenomenal basketball coach. Hear me not saying that. I'm just saying I don't want to be hearing calls for these guys over Hubert Davis right now. I just have no time or ear for that. Maybe you do. If you do, make a case for it in the comments. I would love to hear it. I'd love to read it. But you know what? Here's something you can say about both Vanderbilt and Cincinnati right now that you cannot say about North Carolina. They're both still playing basketball, albeit in the NIT, just like the Tar Heels would have been doing. But they are playing. I guess there's something to that. But is it so much better than what the Tar Heels did that let's run out and make an even trade for Jerry Stackhouse or Wes Miller? Is it even an even trade? I'm not inclined to think so. So just take that for what it's worth. Well, you know why I'm saying all this? Because I'm also hearing all this noise about firing Coach Davis. That's not everybody. Hear me not saying it's the overwhelming majority. I think it's probably the loud minority saying that. I hope it's not you. Because that's silly. And we're going to talk more about it in just a second. But first, this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. We have just passed the midway point of the NBA season, and now the NCAA tournament is here. So it's the perfect time to download FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because new customers get a no sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. So download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe, secure, and it's super easy to use. And then you can bet on everything from the money line to point scores and 3-pointers drained. So make sure to check out all the great possibilities for the NCAA tournament games kicking off today. Plus, FanDuel even lets you combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout with a same game parlay. So don't miss the chance to get your no sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. If you are doing some last-minute preparation for your bracket, make sure to go check out the Locked On College Basketball Bracket Breakdown, where myself and Andy Patton take you through everything you need to know. And if you want more in-depth, we've been doing that all week long on the show, Monday up through today, Thursday. Today's show, we looked at the 1 and 2 seeds, talked about why they could win the NCAA tournament and why they might not. Go check it out right now, Locked On College Basketball on YouTube and anywhere else you get podcasts. All right. I have zero time right now to hear your takes about firing Coach Davis, whether it's you listening or just general Carolina fan out there in the ether, right? At a minimum, he needs to have 2 more years. It is insane to me to be having any kind of discussion about firing Coach Davis. It's not rational. It's not logical. It's not sensible for a number of reasons. What coach would say, oh, look at how Carolina just treated Hubert Davis. You know what? I want to go jump on that ship. And I know somebody would because it's North Carolina and people want to be here. But you know what I mean? Like, that would be zero trust. And I do hear this argument. In the transfer portal era, in the NIL era, in this era where the upcoming senior class around the country does still have one more year of COVID eligibility. That's the last class, by the way. There is a lot to be said for it's easier to win immediately right now. And there's not much excuse not to. I get that. Look at Jerome Tang and what he did for Kansas State this year. They were picked dead last in the Big 12 in the preseason poll, finished third, got a 3 seed in the NCAA tournament. Just turn that thing right around. Dennis Gates at Mizzou. They were picked like 11th in the SEC and finished, I believe it was 3rd or 4th in the SEC, have like a 7 seed in the NCAA tournament. But then you have other examples who didn't turn it around quickly. Look at Louisville and Kenny Payne this year. It's painful. And I think Coach Davis and what he's done is somewhere in between those two things. Because frankly, to be fair, aside from the strong end to last year's regular season and the postseason run, the first 2 years of the Coach Davis era at Chapel Hill have been, I would say, average in terms of on-court results. Like recruiting is going gangbusters. We've all seen it. We all know it. I think the way, I know things don't seem to be great right now, but the way he's able to connect with and understand and talk to players and parents, I think is fantastic. But again, the on-court results have been average. And by North Carolina standards, we would say below average, right? Yeah, absolutely. But for America-wide, Division I-wide standards, average results for the Tar Heels. But here's the thing. Coach Davis, despite like this call to quickly change things in the transfer portal era, has had this core nucleus of Roy Williams holdover guys like Caleb Love and RJ and Mondo, those types of players. And that's not a bad thing, right? They are good to great to elite players. What Mondo did last year, what Caleb did at times last year, what RJ was able to do at times last year and this year, especially this year when his finger wasn't wacky. And so that's the core nucleus. And so that's why I can hear and understand when, like, some people following Wednesday's show where Coach Pat Kilby and I said, like, we want to see Mondo back. We expect to see RJ back, for example. Just heard some feedback from that, people saying, I just want to clean house and start fresh. I hear that. I hear that argument. And I wouldn't put much of a fight back against it. But Coach Davis is still chiefly working with Coach Williams, guys. And I know that Coach Davis helped recruit some of them, but it's ultimately Coach Williams' call and Coach Williams' guys. Coach Davis has been able to bring in some of his now, but like, don't you want to see what a Coach Davis skill set nucleus looks like when you get in Zayden High and Simeon Wilcher next year? And all those guys in the class of 24 with Elliot Cadeau and Ian Jackson and Drake Powell, James Brown, right? Like, can we just pump the brakes and allow things to unfold? I get that we want things to happen quickly. I get that we want to be elite every year. And frankly, we should. North Carolina should be. But when there's coaching changeover, sometimes it takes time, especially for a brand new coach. And so I know Coach Davis has brought in some portal guys, but that's fill. That's not the substance or the basis or the foundation. Coach Davis needs to be able to fully implement these guys that he's recruited, that he has chosen and installed as a foundation, and then bring in the supplementary, the auxiliary, the ancillary pieces around it, whatever words you want to use there. Now, I get it. Is there room for coaching growth for Coach Davis? Yes. I don't agree with every decision he's made, but he doesn't care if I agree with it. He doesn't care if you agree with it because it's his job. Is there room for other development? Yeah. It feels like not everyone made the leap they should this year. The shooting fell off. I think some of that is just luck, regression. But Coach Davis is working and growing and learning, just like anybody else would be in a new job that they had never done before. And it's just different because his is very much in the public sphere. I just don't understand what it is about fandom to be out on someone so quickly. Is it the social media-ness of our world now where everyone has a voice and everyone screams it from the rooftops? Maybe we didn't hear it so much in Coach Davis's era. Coach Smith's era. I was picturing Coach Smith and Coach Davis at the same time. In Coach Smith's era, I mean, sure, he was hung in effigy when things weren't going too well, but the school stuck with him. Things turned out all right. Why is there the recency bias? Why can we not look at the long term, right? Like, for example, we talked about that core just now. Think about it, it's not just these 2 years. Quite frankly, the last 2 years of Coach Williams' tenure were worse than this. The Cole Anthony year, lots of injuries, I get it. And then his final year where Carolina lost in the first round of the ACC tournament or the NCAA tournament to Wisconsin. It's not been a great 4-year run outside of last March, or late February, I guess, as well. Why the unwillingness to allow development? We want that with players. Why can't we allow it with coaches? Why the recency bias? This year did not go well, but it wasn't an abomination. It wasn't an utter failure or disaster. No blowouts, 1 double-digit loss. That's it. Ill-timed injuries. There were a lot of factors at play that I think changed just a couple things here and there, and we're having a different conversation right now. And I know a lot of you agree with me because you've reached out and told me such. So I just want to pump the brakes a little bit. And I want to tell you the thing I said on the very first podcast that I ever did for Locked On Tar Heels. I want to ask for patience for Coach Davis. I'm going to talk about that all offseason. That's going to be something I preach. I know you would want people to have some patience with you, and I'd like to ask you to do the same for him. Now, if we're at this same point 2 years from now, yeah, it's a whole other conversation. I'm totally down with that. Or maybe even next year, the hot seat begins to warm up a little bit. Then we'll begin to talk, but not now, not yet. It's not time. All right. Well, we do have, this is part of college basketball. Now it's time to talk transfer portal. We've been doing it a little bit all week, but finally we have some specific names of guys that the Tar Heels have reached out to, and we're going to talk about them in just a second. All right, friends, transfer portal season is upon us. We've started to hear some names of guys that Carolina has reached out to. So let me just set the scene, set the context a little bit. As of right now, Carolina has 3 open scholarships. They would have had 1 already. And then with the transfers of Tyler Nickel and Justin McCoy, that opens up 2 more. So right now, 3 scholarships to play with. That could grow, that number, obviously, if more players decide to transfer or to turn professional. That number can grow. It could also shrink if Armando Bacot decides to come back, for example. I'm not including him in those 3 scholarships. So he could come grab one of those, and that would dwindle that number back to 2. Remember, players using their COVID year now count against the scholarship quota of 13 total scholarships. So keep that in mind. Another bit of setup is I also want to say that the 2 names we're going to talk about would both be transferring up from mid-majorish to high majorish. And it's just tough to know how that would go. Nothing is certain, nothing is safe, nothing is secure, but transferring from high major to high major, like Cam Johnson from Pitt to Carolina, that's a little bit more of a sure thing than somebody transferring up. Again, nothing is certain, but it's just easier because you've seen already how a player competes on a consistent basis against high-level competition. Like as a difference, as the opposite of Cam Johnson, think about Christian Keeling coming up from Charleston Southern or Justin Pierce from William and Mary. It was tough. And I think we ultimately saw, again, they were nice guys. They played hard, but ultimately there was a reason they weren't at the high major level already. It's nothing against them. It just is what it is. Different people have different skill sets and talents and abilities. That's true of anything in life, right? Yeah. I'm also a musician. I'm a singer. There are infinitely better singers than I am. There are infinitely better guitar players or piano players or bass players, whatever instruments it is that I play. There are people that are way better than me at them. It's just a fact of life. So these are the names we're going to start discussing. We're going to continue to keep an eye out for the conversations with them, but also with others, while keeping in mind that both of these players would be moving up a level in terms of competition in Division One. I'm going to give you both names. One of them I like a little bit more than the other right out of the gate, right? We've just been hearing about these guys for the last day or two. So the first one, Nick Timberlake, is a 6'4", 200-pound guard from Towson University. He would be a grad transfer. Towson's in the CAA, which is the same conference as like Charleston, UNC, Wilmington, schools like that. That's that conference. This would actually be Timberlake's sixth year in college. The 23-24 season would be. He's originally from Massachusetts, played all 5 of his previous seasons at Towson, so a loyal guy. They're doing the deal. This year, 2022-23, averaged 17.7 points a game, 3.9 rebounds, 2.4 assists, shot 45.5% from the field, 41.6 from 3, and 84.5 from the free throw line. So some really good percentages there. We'll talk about volume in just a second. For his career, let's extrapolate out a little bigger. 122 games, 12.5 points a game, so down about 5 points or so, 3.9 rebounds. So that's exactly on par with what he did this season. 1.6 assists, 42% field goal percentage, 37.9 from 3, and 79.2 from the free throw line. So his percentages career-wide are a little bit down, but you expect that, right? Especially a player that plays 5 years, going to take some jumps as he goes. So love to see those numbers from his senior, or I guess super senior year already this year. As a scorer, he had 3 different 30-point games this year, including a career-high 34 versus Charleston, who Carolina knows firsthand is a great basketball team this year under Pat Kelsey, who is coming up in the tournament. I can't remember if they play today or tomorrow, but is a 12 seed and one that a lot of people are picking to get that 12-5 upset. And here's a good thing. One of the things he's a guard, it's a different position, but you'll understand this comparison. One of the differences we talked about this year with Pete Nance as opposed to Brady Manek is that Pete Nance had a great career 3-point percentage, but the volume of 3-pointers taken was nowhere near what Brady Manek did. And that bore out this season versus last season, right? Well, here's the good thing. One of the good things to me about Nick Timberlake. He is a volume 3-point shooter. Again, I said he shot 41.6 from 3 this year. Well, he did that on 221 attempts. So he made 92 threes this year. That would be right there in like the top. I haven't pulled up the numbers. I could maybe do that in real time, but that would be one of the top 5 or 6 Carolina 3-point shooters in terms of total 3-pointers made all time. And so now, again, it's a different level when you come in and you have to do that against higher level competition, but he's 6'4" and has that capability there. Okay, I've got it pulled up now. Here are the top 6 all time. Justin Jackson, 105, as we know, the only Carolina player to ever hit 100. That was in the 16-17 championship season. Brady Manek is second all time, 98. Cam Johnson, man, we talked about all these guys today. Cam Johnson is third, 96. Shaman hit 95. Marcus Page, 94. And then Joel Berry and Caleb Love each tied 1 year for 93. Those are the only 7 guys that have ever hit 90 or more threes in a season for North Carolina. And Timberlake, again, hit 92 this year. So he would be right in that discussion with those guys. If it translates, that's the big question mark. Would it translate? We'd have to watch. So it's time to start watching some tape, seeing what we can figure out, seeing how he's done against higher level competition. All right, let's go to the second player Carolina has reached out to that we've heard about. Paxson Wojcik. I love it. It's very close to my son. My son's name is Paxton. This is Paxson. Pretty close. Very similarly sized to Nick Timberlake. A guard, 6'4", 185. Timberlake was 200. So a little bit more meat on the bones for Timberlake there, which would tell me he would hold his own a little better at the ACC level. Wojcik would also be a grad transfer coming from Brown in the Ivy League. Here's something interesting about Wojcik, though. He's from Charleston, South Carolina. He's a Southern boy, so that would be a little return home. Doesn't always mean something, but it certainly isn't nothing. Prior to Brown, he played 2 years at Brown. Prior to that, he played for Loyola, the good one in Chicago there. So, man, they didn't have a good year this year, but man, that team knows how to win. And so that would be an encouraging thing. He brings a winning mentality. This year for Brown, 14.9 points a game, 7.2 rebounds as a guard. That's impressive. 3.2 assists, 46.1 field goal percent, 38.3 from three. Pretty good. But 68.9% from the free throw line. That is, curious, right? For his career, Wojcik, 99 games, 7.7 points a game, 3.3 boards, 1.5 assists, 45.3 from the field, 36.4 from three, and 67.4 from the free throw line. So same as Timberlake, his career numbers are a little bit percentage-wise below his career, below what he did this year. But again, that's an encouraging sign, growing and developing. His career high was 25. Interestingly enough, his last game of this year, which he finished the year with 3 straight 20-point outings. So you love to see that output coming. And Carolina saw him up close and personal last year. Carolina played Brown. And in that game, Wojcik scored 14 points on 7 of 19 shooting, 0 of 5 from 3. So not a highly efficient shooting day, but did score 14. But that's the kind of competition and opponent he would face every night if he played for Carolina. So that's just something to keep in mind. So at this point, I'm personally more intrigued by Timberlake. But again, the question with either of these guys is, does it level up from the Ivy League or the CAA to the ACC? It's a different playing field. We'd have to figure that out. And we will. We're going to keep having more conversations about it, keep bringing up names as Carolina starts investigating them, because I know it's interesting for all of us. Well, even though it's a day of mourning, it's still a great day to be a Tar Heel. Thank you so much for tuning in. That does it for this episode. Reminder, send in videos, letters, notes of encouragement to Leaky and Pete. That's for tomorrow's show. So get them in today. Do it. You can follow the show on Twitter at Locked On Heels. You can follow me at Isaac Shade. Email the show, lockedontarheels@gmail.com. Smash the like button. Leave comments on your thoughts about these recruits that Carolina has reached out to. And don't forget to subscribe, which is going like gangbusters right now. Love it. Thank you so much. And for your next listen, once again, check out Locked On College Basketball, available on YouTube and anywhere else you get podcasts. All right, folks, until tomorrow, peace.